gained his powers from Ares, gained a figure from Beast Kingdom. Here's a look at the Beast Kingdom DAH-070 Dark Knight's Medal, the Merciless. DC's very own multiverse launched a series of otherworldly takes on the classic heroes. In 2017's Batman Earth 12, the heroes of the DC universe launched a campaign to take on the mighty Greek god of war of Ares. After the defeat, Batman took the mighty helmet of Ares for himself, creating a new powerful yet ruthless and corrupt anti-hero that decides to wage a merciless war on the entire world. Dubbed Batman the Merciless, no one stood in the front of his goal of world domination. With his trusted god-killer sword by his side and the power of Ares, this new character was the most formidable version of Batman ever seen. First he was a hero, now he's a threat. Just before we get a closer look though at the Beast Kingdom Dark Knight's death metal dynamic action heroes, DAH-070 the Merciless. Backing up just a bit, I'd like to thank the folks over at Beast Kingdom that provided the sample we could have a look at. The Merciless, you'll be happy to know, is available right now through various either online sites or in stores, and it'll range from anywhere from $60 to $100 to get the figure. The figure, though, is going to stand at 8 inches in height, or Merciless is going to stand 20 centimeters tall. We don't really have a lot of Merciless figures to compare with, so I'm going to slide over the one that we got here from Beast Kingdom. I'm going to bring in the one, though, we got from McFarlane Toys. Different approach, though, to color scheme. Obviously, you can see the one with Beast Kingdoms is going more with a much darker blue. The one, though, we got from McFarlane Toys, though being about very similar in size, went the more lighter color, almost more of a teal. Starting things first, Merciless Batman does come included with an instruction guide and display stand. The instruction guide not only shows you how to swap out the hands for holding the God Killer sword, how to change out the head, for example, but most importantly, it also shows you how to install the LR41 ×4 batteries in the cavity of its body. As the lights do light up, although they don't light up, though, with the Bruce Wayne portrait that we are looking at right now, but the helmeted version, though, of Merciless, you'll see how that lights and illuminates. On the back of it is basically just the exact same, although it's just in a different language. So we're just going to fold that up and put it off to the side. He also comes, of course, with a display stand. We've seen these stands before with the other DAH series line figures. This time around, it actually gets printed on the top. Dark Knight's Medal, with a nice silhouette image, though, of Merciless. If you're also not familiar with the name of the character, or forget quickly, they also have taken the time to print the name of the character on the front there as well. The display stand, though, if you're looking at this, consists of basically two parts. You have the main post that plugs in, obviously, to the actual base itself, but then you also have yourself like a waist clip. The waist clip on its own does also have a hinge joint, so you can move this up and down. And of course, if you're looking to fit this around the waist of Bruce, you may want to widen this quite a bit because he has substantially thick armor. Basically just clips around his waist. It doesn't increase or decrease its height, so it's always going to sit around the same area, around his mid-abdomen area. Other accessories that come included with the figure. You get 4 sets of interchangeable hands. As he has right now, he only has closed fists stock with the figure when you get him first out of the packaging. That could, though, be easily swapped out with a pair of swappable gripping hands, good for holding the God Killer sword. We'll do that more in a moment. The figure also comes included with a pair of more relaxed hands. And he also comes included with, slightly, I suppose, really, if you're looking at the two. This one, would you consider to be more dynamic hands? It would be a little bit more relaxed hands. Neither one of those would hold the sword, but good, of course, if you want to have the figure displayed, other than just having closed fists the whole time. Swapping again out the hands, one thing you will want to be careful of with the hands is that when you do pop them off, his armor, though, will slide off as well from the forearm. So just pop that off carefully. Pop then the new hand in place. You can see there's the big, rather large ball joints on the ends of its wrists. I'm just going to pop that hand back then in place. You may have to exert some more pressure than you're really expecting, because the pegs being so large in size, you really do have to kind of fight to get those hands in place. The figure also as well comes included as God Killer sword. I do think they've done a nice job, though, on this, giving us a really nice metallic gold finish with all the recessed details there added on both sides of the blade. The blade, though, looks sharp. You'll be happy to know, though, it's not going to be drawing any bit of blood, and this will just then fit into his hand with the provided hilt on the bottom. There is also, from what I can see, no storage space on the figure for storing the sword. I suppose if you wanted to, you could probably maybe slide it through the chains on the back of kind of where his belt area is, but there's no dedicated space allotted to store the God Killer sword if it's not going to be currently in his hands. You may be also looking off to the side here, noticing all these electrical pieces. These are all basic component pieces that then can go around his body. Not necessarily a rhyme or reason. If you were to go back and reference the instruction guide, for example, it wouldn't necessarily tell you where one piece is going to go over the other. You sort of have to, again, just look at them and guess more for yourself where they're supposed to be going. Some do give you a little bit of cues. So like this one, for example, has see a little opening down below, kind of looks like a C. These will then fit around his wrist, for example. You'll have like this piece here, for example, that also will then fit around his wrist or down below in his legs. And then like this piece here, for example, I just sort of had it wrapped around his waist. Again, you can just fit them quite freely on there. The only struggle you may end up finding is if, for example, you're trying to put them around his wrist, for example. I keep probably saying example a couple of times. If you take this and fit this around his wrist, you do struggle, though, a bit to get it around his hand. A lot of times it just ends up popping the hands off. But again, like it's just more just a guessing game. I mean, I would likely just display this on the shelf with the electricity, but again, like there's no specific placement where they're supposed to go. There isn't also one I've noticed here for the God Killer sword. Kind of just looking around with what we had to work with here. I mean, there's a few little pieces where I suppose you could try to wrap this around the blade, but I mean, they're not really dedicated specifically, I would imagine, for the blade. They're more so suited for his body. But you get, though, a total, though, of 4 of these. Actually, five. You get a total of 5 of these, and again, they'll just fit anywhere on the body that you can find a place for. Let's just remove this for right now. Just put this off to the side. The figure also comes included with a series of interchangeable heads. 3, in fact. The one that I've started things with first, I believe, in fact, was the head sculpt that we start with when you get this guy first out of his packaging. Sort of really a more older-looking Bruce. He, as you can see, has a scar there on the one side of his face. More of a grimaced teeth sculpt. And he actually has slightly more shorter hair. He has, though, I feel, of the better two. He has the one with longer hair. You can see it's sort of more blowing to the side. He trades off, though, the visible smile of visible teeth in favor of longer hair. And I got to say, like, the longer hair approach looks a little bit nicer. Both the head sculpts are actually painted pretty good, too. Both the eyebrows as well as the, I would say eyes, but in this case, we only have one eye to work with. Both the eyes, in this case, this eye and this eye here, painted really well. I think they've done a nice job on this. And, of course, you do also get yourself the Merciless helmet there as well. Most people, I'm sure, would likely display this figure with the Merciless head sculpt, just because, again, like, you get the helmet, you get the cool little fins there on the sides. These are more softer plastic, and when you do want to change out the head, for example, you're just going to hold on to the body here and just pop the head off the post. Now, the head, like the hands, aren't the easiest thing to remove. A lot of times, though, when you are trying to remove the head, just because, again, like the ball joint is so big on these. Let me see if I can get this all completely out. There we go. Look at the size of this ball joint. Look at the size of the ball hole that it has to fit inside of. But to change out the head, basically, is just a case of popping the new head then in place, and you've got yourself then the Merciless body with the Merciless helmet, which I feel, again, is the nicest of the ways of displaying the figure. If I was, though, to default to an unhelmeted version of Merciless, I'd likely go to this one, just because I like the way they sculpted the hair to the side like this. Okay, so let's talk about the one thing I'm not as crazy about. It's the fact that this helmet illuminates. Not that it illuminates is the thing that's disappointing, but the way to access it becomes really problematic. It isn't just a case, though, when you're looking at the figure. I'm just popped off the top of the torso, and actually that might be a good thing. The top of the torso separates from the bottom half just by a very large ball joint once again. But you can't turn this on any which way, other than having to do the thing I'm about to do, which I feel like, again, there's just a lot of unnecessary steps. Like, at the very least, there is going to be a switch. You'll see where it actually is underneath all of this. But if there had only just been a switch right here, and it certainly worked my way, and actually just the fact that the top of the torso fell off, that if there was a switch just right there, even if they didn't want to put a sightly hole or a peg or anything on the front, like a button, for example, that if you were to press that, that would be the thing that would illuminate the eyes. That would be one thing. But if they wanted to conceal it, I think it would be best concealed underneath. Unless they were worried that with just the movement and friction of rotating the top of his body from the bottom half, maybe they didn't want to put the switch right there. But I think that that would have been the more easier route to go. In order to illuminate this guy, here's all the things that you're going to have to do. First, you're going to have to remove the head. We'll just pop that off the post. You're also as well going to have to remove the arms, because the arms, in order to get this piece all off, it has to obviously fit through. See, obviously this part down below here is finished all the way around. There's no way to lift this off the torso without first removing the arms. So we're just going to detach the arms on both sides. Now again, keeping in mind, all the steps that I'm doing right now are all the steps that you're going to have to do every single time you want to turn this guy on and off. So again, we're just going to pop the other arm off here. Just again, remove it from the post. And then you're going to take this piece here and you're going to lift this. You're going to have to remove the entire armor. Now, I looked at this a couple of times and I thought maybe I'm missing a step. Maybe there's a part on the instructions that I haven't yet looked at. But no, this seems to be the way every single time that you need to turn this on. Now, I will say, though, one mistake that I did make is I bought the wrong batteries. Instead of buying the batteries that I thought I had, or instead of buying the batteries I thought I needed, I ended up ultimately buying the wrong size. They do still work, but they don't work the way that they're supposed to work. So I'm just going to plug Merciless's head back in place, because obviously this is one that's going to have the illuminate eyes. I'm going to remove carefully the battery cover. There we go. And you can see already, like, all the batteries have come loose. It does, in theory, take 4 LR41 batteries, I believe. I just happen to be using the next size down smaller. So I end up having to replace it instead with 5 button cell batteries. But they basically will then fit into the provided slots here. I'm just going to have to wing it for right now. And then here is the on and off switch. So again, all the things I just finished doing. The arms, obviously taking off the torso for one thing, removing the arms, removing the head, removing the torso, gaining access to the battery cover, having the batteries obviously already in there, switching it on, putting the battery cover back on, and then just doing all the steps in reverse. Arms, or torso piece, obviously, arms, and then popping it back on the body. You're going to have to do that every single time you want to turn on the figure. And again, just to look at the instructions, just to see that I haven't missed a step at all. The only, again, way to access this is to do all the things I just finished saying. You're going to have to remove the battery cover, and you're going to have to switch this on and off. Other than that, it's a nice looking figure. The only thing, the detriment to it, is the way that you have to go through all those steps in order just to switch it on and off. I believe actually these are LR44 batteries rather than the recommended LR41 batteries, but I've got 5 in here instead of the 4. It will still do the thing it needs to do, and that's illuminate. I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure against the batteries, and you can see if I'm getting that just lined up right. That's, though, how the Merciless's eyes are going to light up. For their credit, they do light pretty decently, although while you're rotating the head, you'll see it illuminates better for the eye that's closest to the bulb, because essentially, like, the bulb is going to be inside here. It's only, though, going to illuminate the one that has the helmet, and even, again, illuminating the helmet, it only seems to work certain ways if you have the head angled. If you bring it down, for example, it illuminates just a little bit better. If you have it up, for example, it doesn't seem to make them as bright. Still, though, again, like, this has all involved me using the wrong batteries, but it still shows you at least the steps that are required in order to do everything I just finished doing. So, you know, again, like, for what it is, I do like the fact that they included the means to illuminate helmets. The problem with it, though, is even with not using the correct batteries, I just don't need, I would not want to have to do this every single time. It would been so much easier if this was just simply sitting on the shelf and there was a battery or something on the back of his body, or if there was, again, like a little switch there on the bottom cavity of his torso. That would have been the easiest way, I feel, to turn it on and off if you wanted to. While flipping a switch on this guy might be difficult to do, the actual end result, though, of at least what they've done from a sculpting standpoint, is a very impressive looking Merciless. Merciless, though, is one of my favorite takeaway characters from the Dark Knight's metal line. Him, though, and the Batman Who Laughs, 2 of my favorite all-time characters. And I think for really what it is, they've done a really nice job on him. One thing, though, that I will credit Beast Kingdom for doing is that when it comes to their figures, essentially what it is, as you probably may have already seen, is that they take basically like a plastic body frame, and then they layer over top of it the fabric and then all the metal material, or in this case, the plastic armor material. So it does kind of give you more of a realistic feel to it. There are a few little things, like, for example, like his torso will pop off a little too frequently. Certainly when we look at the articulation on this guy, the ball joint, I don't know, doesn't ever seem to stay in place. But it does look good, though. I will say, like, the head sculpt does from a standpoint of a skull with these cool little bat wings up the top there. The finish that they've also used for the blue looks quite good for the armor as well. And for really how detailed the armor actually is, there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the way that they forged this. It looks to be also the case that when it comes to the blue, that they may have started, though, with a black, and then they brushed over top of it the metallic blue. Because there are a few little areas, especially like the shoulder pads, for example, where you can see like a darker coloring of a plastic almost wanting to bleed through. Of course, it's got the emblem there on the front. Very nice design on that. And of course, you've got this really neat, very intricate looking armor. But though underneath it, there is also as well some additional fur. Now, this is something that could only have really been pulled off by using real fabric material. Sculpting, though, in plastic, it loses, obviously, some of the more realism to it. So you can see that it's got a really nice kind of faux fur material there on the back. He also does have meshing underneath all of these armor pieces, too. So underneath his arm guard, for example, his shoulder guard, and even really just the torso, there's an interesting kind of meshed material that they've used underneath to give it the look of chainmail. He's got also as well a real fabric skirt down below here, a nice skull there for the belt buckle, and you've got some real functioning chains that actually do wrap around all around for his body. He, like, from an aesthetic standpoint, from a design standpoint, Merciless looks fantastic. It just sort of has, like, there's a few little things, though, I would have changed to it more specifically, just how to turn on and off the switch. And again, like some of the things, like for his torso, for example, sometimes, though, when you are moving the figure around, his torso is kind of known to frequently fall off. It's a simple fix, though. It's just a case of popping the head or popping the torso back onto that large ball joint. But though, when you are rotating the figure, every once in a while, you may notice that that does come loose. Speaking of the figure moving the figure around, let's look at the figure's articulation. So Merciless's head is going to be on that ball post. Whether you decide to use this head sculpt or you decide to use the earlier looked at Bruce Wayne heads, either way, though, the head's going to rotate all the way around. The head looks down that far, it looks up, and you can also move it back and forth as well. The shoulders freely can move out despite having these large shoulders and the fur underneath it. They can move out at 90 degrees. You can take the arms and move forward. There goes one of the hands. You can move them back. He has a swivel there, sort of a swivel there in the elbow area. And again, if you had yourself a hand, I just happen to have somebody needs to lend me a hand, I just have it down there. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. But again, periodically, popping the ball joint off is something that's going to, it always seems to be happening. Again, it looks to be almost the case, like it seems to root itself fairly well into the actual socket. I think if anything, they probably may have made the post a little bit longer, or maybe even the ball joint just a little bit smaller. It needs just to catch itself a little bit better than what it does. All the pressure I'm doing is just to kind of force the top of the torso down. I think I have it in place, and when I start to move the figure around, it just, again, pops itself off. It's again, a simple fix. It's not like it's necessarily broken, but it's something you might find yourself doing a lot when you have this figure in your hands. The lower torso is going to also be in a ball joint. That's more secure in place. The legs do split out. You can take the legs and move forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. What would be the equivalent of a double hinge on the knee, because there's a hinge right there and there's a hinge right there, so it does bend pretty good there too. And he has quite a bit of freedom there when it comes to moving his legs. You can move his ankles up and down this way. You can rock them back and forth. And the figure does also have toe articulation. There goes the torso again. Where I feel the figure does things better is cosmetically. Obviously, the way he's designed does look good. I feel where he maybe suffers, though, is the construction of the figure. Because obviously with using large ball joints like this, you would think that large ball joints would kind of hold the things better in place. Arms fall off. I mean, hands fall off. That's just something that goes commonly with ball jointed hands. That's a simple fix again, and just pop it back in place. The bigger thing is usually just the ball joint, though, for the top of the torso. You probably already saw in this review that even just, again, moving the torso around, the top seems to separate itself very easily from the lower half of his body. I don't know, again, like if they had taken the post and made it a little bit longer so that it had to work a little harder to get further down into the torso. By having only as short as it is and then using a very large ball joint below it, I don't feel like there's enough of it being able to reach the abdomen area, and that may be one of the reasons, one of the culprits as to why the top of the body separates so easily from the bottom half. Other than that, though, it's a good-looking figure. The illumination is a nice touch that they included, but it needed to be a lot more easy to access. It had to be something where you could easily have gotten it to it on the figure, whether it be the case that it was a switch, though, on the back of the figure's body, whether it even be just even a case of if you removed the top of the torso and had the switch been like right here or here. I think it should have been a little bit more accessible, like I said, instead of having to always rely on stripping down the armor every single time you need to turn this helmet on. I almost really feel like when you're looking at a figure like this, you need to rate it on its design and you need to rate it on its construction as two separate categories. In a category, though, of design, I think Beast Kingdom's done an amazing job here on the Merciless from Death Metal. The figure looks impressive. The figure has some cool colors going for him. And one thing that Beast Kingdom's always done a really great job of is using real materials. Instead of just sculpting this from head to toe in all plastic, Beast Kingdom, as they've always done, is they've layered this. So you've got the basic building blocks of a plastic body underneath. Then the frame is then wrapped in fabric. In this case, you've got the chainmail of his armor. And then they, of course, add the fur effect with a faux fur material just around his shoulders. And, of course, they plate it all around it with the plastic armor. It does make for a very interesting layered look to Merciless. And that's one of the things that make really this figure shine and stand out. Then when you look, though, at his construction, This is maybe perhaps one of the categories where the figure falls apart, literally. Like his top of his torso is probably the biggest thing. Hands are simple. I mean, I have had figures with ball-jointed hands, and that's always a problem where if you're changing out hands, every once in a while, those hands may fall off. The top of his torso, though, with the post not being long enough, and I maybe think that that could have been one of the big detriments to the way that this figure has been assembled, with the post not being long enough, I feel like it just doesn't clasp well enough to the lower half of his abdomen. The post, I feel, is way too short, considering it has so much armor around it. But also as well, if this guy ever wants to be illuminated, as you saw in this review, there's a lot of small steps that are involved where you have to do one after the other. It isn't just the case where you flip the switch, the lights turn on. You flip the switch again, the lights flip off. In this case, you actually have to remove the arms. You have to remove the armor torso. You have to remove, obviously, the head. Then you have to still remove the battery plate on the back. And providing you have used the right batteries, like I didn't use, unfortunately, the right batteries, then you'll have this illuminate. But to have that then stay illuminated, you have to basically put all the armor and everything else back onto the figure's body, have it illuminate for the while that you want to have it, or if you want to show somebody how well those eyes glow, then you have to do all the steps again of basically disassembling everything on him in order to gain access to the battery compartment. I like the idea that it does hold batteries, and I like the idea that it illuminates the eyes. What I don't necessarily like, though, is, again, all the steps are involved to get from point A to point B. What do you guys, though, think of the Beast Kingdom Dark Knights Death Metal Dynamic Action Heroes Merciless? Is this a figure you guys could see yourselves picking up? Or let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it. Big thank you once again, obviously, to Beast Kingdom that provided this sample of the Merciless that we could have a look at in this review. The guy is available right now either in comic book stores or online, and depending on where you shop around, some of the sites that have sold this guy in the past, I think, have marked him down at one point. I think he was probably more around the 100 to 120 price point. Right now, if you guys are interested, you probably get this guy for under 100. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. If in the meantime you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and want to stick around for more, we are, by the way, going to be looking at more Beast Kingdom reviews. If that's the kind of thing you like to stick around for more, I'd like to think you can stick around for other things too. But make sure, of course, you're hitting that subscribe, making sure you're turning on the bell notification, and making sure, of course, you're coming back here on a regular basis. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.